Drive. I think we're streaming. Hello, welcome to the Art of Rock. Every Saturday we are here, doing it here, right now. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the land I'm on is Tongva land, and it's Martin Luther King's birthday in a few days, and Black Lives Matter. Every Saturday morning, every Saturday morning we're here, Art of Rock, doing this around about this time, this space channel. Please join us. This is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. Send me some bucks, or don't. Jump on there. You can watch a whole bunch of stuff for free. There's another gig coming up, Ice Planet 9000. Oh my God, it's like 3 weeks time, 2 weeks time. There's a really awesome playlist I want you to follow, which is the Industrial Incisions playlist. Please follow it. And if you're on it, pimp it. Please pimp it. Vulture Culture does a really awesome deep dive into synthesizers on a Wednesday night. It's just great. You need to get into it. And also MTV TV. It's amazing. If you've got a video, send it to them. And if you're looking for videos, there, watch it. Do me a favor, pimp that once a week. Just say, hey, I'm watching MTV TV. Send out the love. We need it. They need it. They also have a Patreon. We've got to keep them going. We must keep them going. It is very important. And Razi, thank you so much for covering me as being co-host.
Always a pleasure.
Tell me about this crazy idea you have. Oh,
I don't think it's that crazy. I mean, I say some crazy shit. I'm just kidding. I never say anything crazy. I'm just always interested, and I think the consensus around the panel is what people have been up to in production this week. Maybe there's something new that you stumbled on, made a new patch, created a new effect, wrote a new song, released a new album suddenly. What are you up to? Did you record anything? Did you make something?
Guys?
I have spent a lot of time with my Hydrosynth this week. Mostly because it really does do lush pads, lush light. It's just fun to play because it's really expressive. And I just kind of needed to do something that was a little slower paced and more ambient and just kind of chill as hell. So, the Hydrosynth is really good at that. Also saw the Super JX, Roland Super JX video on Wednesday. And yeah, I'm really, kind of inspired by that thing. I like them. I don't know if I need one.
They're very cheap. You don't need one.
They are.
JXs were always super cheap. The Super JXs, always cheap.
Yeah.
Great synth.
And, it's analog, but still manages to have that sound. Also, I don't know if you've seen the NAMM news, but Chord has a MIDI 2.0 controller on the headed out the door, soon to be available. And the idea of having an actual MIDI 2 compliant controller that sounds kind of vaguely sexy. And the interesting thing is that I'm noticing these days is for the longest time, really long time, keybeds kind of sucked, across the board, but Korg has gotten it this time, and it's a MIDI 2 controller that also has aftertouch, and not just aftertouch, but poly aftertouch, so it's able to do the real deal, that's actually kind of cool.
Resi, go, please.
What's good about MIDI 2.0? I think that it's been 4 months since we talked about it. Above MPE.
It does do MPE, which is that's kind of useful.
What's MPE?
But more importantly,
no acronyms. What's MPE?
Musical production expression.
Yeah.
Oh, so close.
Almost. So it's able to do essentially aftertouch, but with a different channel. Also, it can do all of that plus other expression stuff, which is I guess that's kind of handy. Also, but I think the biggest most important thing in MIDI 2.0 is it's bidirectional. So MIDI 2, like a VST or an instrument or something, is able to say, hey, here are the features I have and that I need. And the controller, is able to say, hey, I can use those and just map that shit for you.
Believe it or not, that's what I was pressing you for. That's the interesting proposition for me. MIDI polyphonic expression, MPE, just means that normally if you try to do expression with the keys, it goes to every note at once, the traditional MIDI way. In polyphonic, if you have a chord of both hands plopped down, you can do pressure expression per note or controller expression per note, which is a cool thing in making the richest of pads with your Hydrosynth extra rich and thick and creamy. But
and the Hydrosynth speaks MPE. But when you're just playing it in person right there.
But the bidirectional negotiation, back to that enhancement of MIDI so that things can talk to each other.
Probably the biggest part of MIDI 2.0 is, being able to interrogate an instrument and find out what it needs, and then, configure yourself to provide, like everything, and present it to the user.
I have a dream in a perfect world where everything has a little scribble strip above it. Every knob has a text indicator above it and a parameter range thing, so that when you do a MIDI, it knows and it says what it is and stuff.
The new Chord controller does do that.
Good.
It gets it from the VST or the instrument, and configures those knobs and then tells you what the fuck they are.
Okay, I like MIDI 2.0.
Yeah, there's nothing but like good stuff available. Also, like there's a bunch of MIDI 2 advancements happening, including like I think Microsoft's finally catching up on MIDI 2 support.
Okay.
Which is going to be good.
That sounds really interesting. It's veering a little bit away from what you actually made with it. But Hydrosynth and new NAMM stuff, NAMM stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And mostly, I've spent a bunch of time just like running through all my patches on the Hydrosynth this week, and then just playing through them slowly. Like the good thing with like a good patch is, as soon as you hear it, you know how it wants to be played. And, it doesn't take a lot of effort to start, playing in the style that patch wants to be played in. It makes it kind of fun because you have to keep switching back and forth as you wind through them.
I always feel that a good synthesizer comes with songs already in it. And you want a synthesizer that's full of songs, and it's an electrical extension of you. It's the gloves that you use to reach into the fourth dimension and higher dimensions. It's the sunglasses you put on so that you can see those higher dimensions, and they just sing of music.
Super good at that.
Yeah. It sounds like a really lovely synth. A lot of people talk very highly of it. When you create a pad for, because I've been looking at what psychedelic music is this week, and it's all very pointless because, like, you watch some guy's YouTube on it, and he's telling a whole bunch of bullshit, and it's like, yeah, dude, duh. But one person I did see, which I thought was very interesting, mentioned Debussy, but they didn't say why. I'll tell you why. But they didn't actually go into why. Like, they didn't go into, okay, here's the nuts and bolts. The nuts and bolts, kids, is whole tone scales, Debussy's use of whole tone scales and all very other dreamy, wonderful, mystical, magical things where there's no scales. It really pisses me off when I talk to somebody and they go, oh, suspended second, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you totally missed it. It's not that type of scale. Yeah, Debussy did mad shit with mad shit, and it was fucking beautiful. But yeah, it's really interesting. Like, what substitutes psychedelic music, and how do you create it, and how do you create something that is freeing your mind? Like, so when you're on the hydrosynth, what are you doing? How are you creating an ambient? Does it just go ba, or does it go bow? Is it working through harmonics? What? Tell
Yeah, a
me.
lot of like you can do a lot of modulation on it. So like, and that makes a patch more fun,
Tell me
or
more.
makes it suck. Mostly it makes it more fun. Um, and like when you're playing, especially with pads, like you want lots of modulation because like that variance is going to make a difference.
Okay, so can I? So obviously we're talking about filter. Are we also talking about like the wave shape? But are you also like going into the actual harmonic content of the sound itself? Like it might be an A, holding down an A. And are you doing stuff that is pulling a fifth or a harmonic or something? Like I mean an actual fifth. Like what?
Yeah, and the nice thing with the hydrosynth is it can do that. You know, like it's deep enough that it can do that. With a lot of other, my other gear, that would be a big old pain in the ass or impossible. But because the hydrosynth's got such a deep and wide, matrix for modulation, you can pull that off. You change the wave, like the shape of the wave, the like default.
Okay.
As time goes by, which is kind of cool.
All right. Jen, morning, Super Spoon morning. This is great. Resi, I see your hand. Talk to me. I'm on a rant. Let's
One of
go.
my favorite things to do with that slight timbral shift of each individual voice in a thing, and this plays into a little bit of what MPE can open up. Pick something on a wavetable synth or a granular that has a really brightening timbral shift, or where the overtones change a lot and it does bring in some odd harmonics or something. So you go from like a flute tone to a scraping tone. And if you can do that a little bit randomly with each voice that you're playing, or each oscillator within each voice that you're playing, you can get just a really, beautiful expressive amount of variety. You do it too far and it just sounds like it's changing to a different sound entirely. But if you can get the root, third, fifth, and octave notes to all shift a little bit timbrally so that they have brightness and darkness shifts, or character shifts like that. That's a really great, like, inspiring richness kind of thing. And you can kind of ruin it if you end up with like a ton of reverb on after it, but sometimes you can get these, like, it's like a PPG wave kind of sound, or wavetable, wave, uh, uh, chord,
Thingy.
wave term, wave.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's, sometimes doing this with the older synths, like you get a grittiness from the 8-bit sampling or 12-bit non-interpolated kind of stuff, and they just sound like moving. They're moving pads, I think is the term that we come up with in that. That's my way into it.
I love this. Thank you. Aaron, what do you think about this?
It's always interesting to hear people talking about it because it's like it's nebulous to me. I'm not super astute when it comes to. I couldn't tell you if it's an E sharp or a Q flat. But what I do find though is how like music makes you feel, and when you're tapping into stuff like that, I think a lot of it. You had mentioned psychedelics, and you had talked about diving into how you shape a wave shape and everything, and I think a lot of it just kind of stems from like what feeling do you want to convey in that track. And if I were to put a finer point on it, it's like I may not be great at reading music, but I'm a damn good editor. And for a more poignant example, if you listen to The Bone Witch of the Swamp, it's it's anchored on a feeling, and it's anchored on this feeling of like if you were to look out and see like the end of the world, if you were to see this desolate swamp, what does that feel like? So that kind of drove the music. And yeah, there's probably more to be said there if I had a finer tuned ear for what certain notes were. But what I kind of latched onto was the feeling of like the music does the breathing, And that might be something that ties into the psychological aspect of things, you know? If you can make the notes wash and thread through each other, and if you can, bring in all these different, feelings to help describe a moment, then more and more the music plays to your advantage. But yeah, there's a point there, but
I love that point. Thank you.
I think it's kind of like what everybody's dabbling at. It's how do you wave shape it? But I think a huge part of that is what is the purpose and what are you driving at? And not everything has to be, doom, gloom, dread. It could be happy and euphoric, but it's how you twist or how far you're willing to twist things in and out of shape to make that happen.
Thank you. And you are a bloody good editor. Thank you. Razi, I'm about to go on a massive, massive rant. So do you want to jump in?
Yeah, this one's probably quick. It's a yes, no.
No, you can be long. It's all right.
Okay. I'm always long, baby. I'm so sorry. I really apologize profusely to everybody. But you teed me up for it. Sometimes Aaron
it's
said,
so good. It's so
yeah,
good.
sorry. Aaron said wave shaping, and you said it in a different context, but my question is there a synth that allows wave shaping right after the oscillator per voice, separately per voice, so you can do some sort of randomized, because you can get some of those same effects of dramatic timbral shifts from a wave shaper of various sorts or clippers. So I'm wondering,
Why, yes,
maybe
there
I should
is.
look. Yeah.
There's two come to mind. One is the Rev 2 by Sequential Circuits, a synthesizer that I cannot talk highly enough of.
Nice.
Oh, do I regret selling it? I don't know. It's a really, really good synth. It is, okay, so the mod matrix on the Rev 2 is better than the Moog 1. The other one's the Moog 1. The Rev 2 is hideously good, where you can set up an LFO to two different LFOs that are interfering, oscillating each waveform, the shape of each waveform separately. Then you can do fun things, and I got this from Alex. I stole most of my tricks from Alex. You run everything through its tape delay, which was brilliant, and then you assign the tape delay to also a really slow LFO as well. That's the trick with the Bucket Brigade and a lot of tape delays and stuff, is you ever so slightly change the time. So it's more than just chorus, you're getting warble. I think that, so this is partly a Moog 1 rant and partly an Emacs rant, or any sampler at all rant. So firstly, kids, here's your homework. I want you to listen to Tristan and Dissolver. Oh my God, I forgot her name. Tristan by Wagner. And Dissolver, I forgot her name. Holy shit. Wagner. Tristan and Dissolver, I forgot her name. And Debussy's Submerged Cathedral. Can somebody please correct me on the name of Tristan? And I suck. Anyway, it's they have these massive, long, beautiful chords, huge, complex orchestral chords that are just like slowly moving. Debussy's Submerged Cathedral is this beautiful, I've talked about it before, it's stunning. Yes, thank you, that's it. Isolde, I can never say her name correctly, their name correctly. Step one, grab a chunk of that chord, sample that fucking chord. And in that chord, in that one finger that's now you've sampled it, there's a whole bunch of Amulet Welcome. There's a whole bunch of notes. So if you play a fifth, now you've got a whole bunch of notes. And what's really wonderful about that is that you might loop that, and it might have a really slight movement in it. But then if you put that onto an LFO, so as you're playing a chord, it's really slowly coming in and coming out. So there's partly volume coming in and coming out. Then you put another one to a high pass filter or a band filter or something, so that not only is the volume moving, but also this band pass or this filter is changing. So the thing is like just drifting around. What I'm getting at is that something absolutely beautiful in psychedelic or mind-altering music or whatever is challenging the concept of a note, where you're going, when I'm playing that note down, it's not just an A or a D, it's this complicated thing. That when you start, it's the same thing with your arpeggios as well. You're not just playing, here is a chord, you're playing this cluster. I may have mentioned this the other day. I had this fucking cluster I've been trying to figure out on a song that I did, and I didn't know why it sounded so fucking fantastic. And I went back into the original version because I'm doing it live. I went back into the original thing, and I noticed that I wrote the wrong note. And it was supposed to be arpeggiating over an E. It was arpeggiating over an F. Totally fucking wrong, but it sounded great. And that's the thing, that if you don't have a sampler, then get a synthesizer and say it might have two voices, and you tune one voice to the whatever the note is, the root, and one to the fifth. And make that fifth one kind of fade in and out. Despite what you're playing, it just comes in waves. And then you might do something really fun that you add a ring modulation, and that fades in and out even slower. So that there's all of this evolution going on. And yes, absolutely, having a thing where the shape of each wave is ever so slightly moving. And if you've got a synth that can wave shape between a triangle and a ramp, that's really beautiful. Like, people usually say having wave shaping between your square, so it's going from a pulse, that's great. It's a little bit obnoxious. But when you've got something that's going from a ramp to a triangle, back to a ramp, to a triangle, to a ramp, you hear those really higher harmonics coming in. So you can get all of this stuff moving and evolving. If you can, I'm not actually familiar. I thank you, Super Tablespoon. I'm not sure what the Grateful did as far as MIDI. I'm not sure. I don't know. Something lovely about this stuff is that you can do it on older stuff. You can definitely do it on a soft synth. But it's all about, I think it's very important to leave behind the concept of singular notes. And also, if you can, Reza, you were touching on it a bit, if you can sample stuff that is harmonically dense, for example, scraping of metal or something that is beautiful or something, and it has this massive overtone, or it's creepy and fucked up, especially sounds when you sample them and you play them back and you go, I don't know is it this note or is it that note? Because the harmonic's so strong, you can't tell. Stuff like that's beautiful. Depeche Mode use that shit all the time in their melody lines. Like you'll have ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, dun 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 dun. It's got this harmonic, really, really, really strong harmonic that sounds like it's a major sixer or something fucking weird above it. That's adding a richness to it where you are delving into this randomness that is beyond your understanding of music. And if it is in your understanding of music, then fuck, good for you. Rezi, talk to me.
I think it's interesting. So we get lost in these words that precede the effect that we're talking about. And I was just thinking on it as you're talking about it. We say switching from a triangle to a sawtooth, and then also in the same breath talking about filtering off harmonics. And we are talking about the same thing, just different ways of describing the same effect. When you look on the scope, if you filter a square wave down to a sine wave on the scope, it looks the same. You can achieve it by cutting off harmonics from a square wave, which is all of them, to a sine wave, which is just the fundamental. Or you can morph algorithmically from a square to a sine, but we're sort of, doing the same thing. And we talk about it from these opposite ends by the way that we're performing it rather than what the effect is or what the sound is.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. You are absolutely correct. 2 reasons to do this. 1, if you are, firstly, you're going to free up a filter. So your filter isn't going through cutting up this thing. You've got the wave shaper doing this stuff. Secondly, is when you start using a ring modulation or frequency modulation, the sound of a frequency modulation of a shark tooth of a triangle is very different to that of a ramp. I always get confused as to, like, I'm used to calling them sawtooths. I get,
Yeah, I go with sawtooth, but ramp is good.
yeah. And also I've heard people call these sawtooths, like a triangle a sawtooth. It's like, I guess I'm confused. Anyway, but nevertheless, when you're actually doing this and actually utilizing ring modulation and frequency modulation, and you might even have that sound modulating the filter, and the amount of it is moving with an LFO or something like that, the sound of, of a modulating triangle is vastly different to that of a modulating sawtooth, which is different again to a square. It really depends on what you're going for. All the players would be connected to a dynamic MIDI modulator, and someone in charge of mastery would control what they were creating and mix. And that sounds amazing. Thank you, Tablespoon. Thank you. Wow, hands, Razi, go.
One of the things also, the upshot of what I was talking about is ways of describing overtones and harmonics don't really matter so much, because the method that we choose to achieve those sounds definitely sounds different. In the mathematically perfect model, looking on the scope at the end of it, we're talking about a sawtooth, a sine wave, but the way that you get there has all these artifacts in almost every case, and that's what we love about certain synths, is that they don't do it perfectly, especially well-programmed newer ones and poorly designed older ones. All of the glitches and features that we get of the difference between trying to filter off harmonics and creating a waveform from the Curtis chip that is that perfect idealized waveform. And then there was something else that I wanted to jump on what you were saying too, but I've forgotten it since I was putting so much effort into remembering that point. But yeah. Carl, you're muted.
Thank you very much. Aaron, talk to me.
Yeah, I was going to throw in too, just thinking about the aspects of, points and plateaus and so on and so forth when it comes to an audio mix. I think that's something that's very, very good to keep reminding yourself of when a track isn't working. When you're going through absolute hell and you're about to put your head through the desk or pull your hair out, I think it's maybe this isn't working because it's just too much going on at once. And that sounds like kind of like an eye roll moment, but it's true in that maybe you need to look at the decibel range and how they play. Maybe this thing does work, but it needs more of a taper and it needs to kind of fade out, or it can build to a head and then do a sharp drop down. It does that inverted triangle where it literally just dives so you can go to the next part of the track, or it tapers off to where they all play together and they all gel. Every time that you're thinking that the track's not working, maybe that's time to re-examine what are the dBs looking like, what are the points looking like, plateaus and trapezoids, pick your poison, pick your verbiage, but it's piecing all that together, or just plain muting the Vox so you can see how all the instrumentals play, because if you don't kind of have that ingrained in you, or if you don't have your editor lens on, I think a lot of people, they get frustrated really quick because they're like, I have so much bombastic shit. This track should be working. This should be fucking amazing because I have all of the things that I've thrown into this area. Everything great. All great things are in this, but it's how well that they interplay or thread or fade in and out to really, to turn it the way you want it to go, to make it more fun, make it more rewarding.
Yes. Thank you. There's a lot. There's a lot here, and there's a lot in what you just said. I just want to finish up on something, which is there's this thing in opera called the Tristan chord, which apparently revolutionized music when he came out with it. So I've got, I just wrote down there what the Tristan chord is, and by modern standards, it's like that's nothing really crazy because we've had the great jazz harmonic revolution. It's the way he used it in the context Wagner used it was like crazy. But there's a chord, F, B, I'll call it E flat, and I'll call it A flat. Which is basically an F minor augmented 7. F minor augmented 7. Sorry, diminished 7. But the voicing of it is really fascinating, because if you move that around onto a different chord, it's just a lovely chord to move around. Play with that chord. Play with it. Ivan left. This was for Ivan. Well, Brett, you're here, and Aaron, you're here, and Raziel, you're here, and I've got people over there. Play with it. See what you can draw on that chord. See if that inspires you to do something. This is from one of the greatest composers ever. Love him or hate him, Wagner was amazing. Try it. Give it a try. And see if that inspires, because the great thing about that chord is that you could do it in such a way that it will sound magical, mystical, or you could do it in such a way that sounds fucking horrifying. So play with it. And there's a whole bunch of little micro chords in there as well that are really terrifying. Does anybody else want to jump in here, or do we want to go back talking about NAMM and synthesizers and stuff? Because I could talk about chords and synthesizers and pads all fucking day. Maybe we should today. Aaron.
I was going to say, this might work in tandem in that when you're experimenting on things, let me preface this with, I think a lot of people get caught up, and rightfully so, in the idea that I have to get the track done. The track, 1,000%, stem to stern, this fucking thing's got to get done. But in that process, like you said, encouraging to play, encouraging to branch out, to, God forbid, have fun. While I would encourage everybody, while you're hammering stuff out, and I've been doing this more and more with my projects, get to a point where you go, you know what? I'm incredibly happy with this, but I'm going to truncate part of this. I'm going to break off a fragment. I'm going to send it over here. And then later, I'm going to take another chunk and I'm going to send it over here. And essentially what you're doing is you're loading artillery rounds, shells, pick your analogy. But the point is, you have all of these things truncated, all of these things that you like and they work and they're not super repetitive. It's not something that people are going to drone out. And ultimately, the point that I'm getting at is you have all these awesome, awesome pieces of a track that you've been working on, or God forbid, just fucking around and having fun with. But when you need to promote your shit, you can keep things fresh. You can keep them interesting. You can use these instrumentals as the sub-layer with your visuals, with your thing, to keep promoting your shit and have fun with it. Like I said before, I don't want to drag this into a taxes discussion, but on the fun side of it, I find it very freeing and very cool lately, to where I'm like, you know what? I want to see what this sounds like with the vocals stripped out, or I want to take these pieces, and it works twofold, because I'm planning for the future of the things that I want to release. It's not as much as a mental load or a burden, and I'm not grasping, and I'm not, zipping around, racing around, trying to figure out what I'm going to post. I just already have it truncated off to the side, to where I could just release them when I feel like it, I would definitely encourage everybody to try that out.
That's a really good idea. I like that, because like finding content that's fresh and new and stuff, it's like, Rosie, what are you thinking in your brain?
Specifically on the topic of stuff that's fresh and new, can we get 30 seconds of room tone from you? Because whatever's in the background, the way it's interacting with the noise cancellation is really nice. It's very quiet. You're going to have to go to this recording and raise that up very high.
Thank you. Well,
but there's like either a pump or a faucet
it's Frank's
or
water.
something.
Frank's water thing. That's great.
Oh, it's a little kiddie fountain.
Yeah. So does it sound like bubble, or does it sound?
No,
is
it sounds like
digitally?
plinking harmonic, atonal, slightly metallic. It's very, very nice, but random, like notes up in the,
Love it.
above
I-
middle C octave.
Something else I find really terrifying is the way that a sync sounds like a voice, because it's of really similar dimensions to your throat, and when you run water down it, it sounds like there's words coming out of it.
I mean, and we're so primed to find language and words in everything. I don't know if that's audio pareidolia, if you're allowed to say that, or if it's some other phenomenon, but yeah, we hear voices in the pipes all the time. That's one of my
Crazy
earliest
kind.
memories as a kid, the pipes making water hammer noises or banging or doing the echoey things, and my dad would say, "Oh, voices in the pipes," or something like that. I was like,
I think if I had a child or had access to the child, I'd explain to them what it is, and I would explain pattern recognition, and it would alleviate horror,
yeah.
and that sort of stuff.
I mean, give the kids a fighting chance to have a scientific outlook, but
Yeah, and also to understand horror. Like, look, if you ever get a monster in your cupboard or there's a demon under the bed, write down what you think and use it as a writing buddy to write a story. Because I'm sure the monster's got some very funny stories. And just, write them down. That's all. Whenever I get, really like freaked out and nervous and stuff, it's like, write that shit down. It's going to be great. Does anybody want to talk about stuff? I got a cat looking at me right now who's actually gone, Fountain, me, play, yes. So I'm going to throw this to the resonator, or I see the hand of the Aaron, and I'm going to be back in 30 seconds.
yeah, Aaron, it's all you.
I was gonna say, to that end, it's like that's I've been falling more and more in love with samples and discordance because Wicked Stories, but it's that nebulous, creepy feeling, of what is that fucking noise, And again, sometimes it's easy to explain. Sometimes that rat-a-tat in the next room, this weird shuffle, scuffling, whatever, is the cat or the bearded dragon that got a bag over them, and then they crashed into a box and whatever. But in that search of the sound, you might be horrified initially. You're like, what the fuck is that dragging noise? Like, what is that step thunk? And it's that nebulous horror. It's that pitch black moment in the movie where you think you might see something in the doorway, and it's just WTF all around. But it's
I think
super
that
heightened
is
because you have to find it. And then you
one of the
find the
most
humor afterwards. You're like, oh, it was the bearded dragon with no depth perception.
yeah.
Crashing
It's one
into
of the
a
most
box.
visceral ways to connect to the fright response is through an unidentifiable or unidentified sound. I mean, that's how you build horror in a horror movie. The visual stuff without the sound is, as we've often talked about, might work, but really an unknown sound, an unknown threatening noise, an unknown dissonant, distant sounding, voice-like audio cue from someplace, especially if the directionality is ambiguous. Oh, that'll ruin your camping trip.
Oh yeah, there's so much to be learned. Like these films couldn't be more different, but the sound approach, holy shit! Jurassic Park, they had said for like the thundering, like low resonant growl of like the T-Rex, that was a koala plus distortion plus whatever, And I think even whale noises, and then oddly enough, whale noises in Mad Max Fury Road when she's belting, when she's pulling the cord for the truck horns. There's a resonance with whale noises and distortion and bass and all, like trucker horns and all this wild shit and this cacophony of wicked sound going out, and also one more audio geek thing. I've never really played with kicking stuff to the left and to the right, but oh, the joy you can have with all of that, especially in horror. And one more thing, and maybe it's just my theory, but being on a Navy ship, they have a sequence of horns that they use to indicate on the port side or the starboard, left or right, as to passing ships. And if there is a higher staffed ship, if there is a higher rank on that ship, there is a series of horns that they would blast to indicate. Where that ties in the music, I don't know. You may be able to, like kind of adopt some of that with left and right panning and whatever
No, I think
else.
there's a lot to that. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of theories that may or may not have provable fact attached to them, but the way that some of the very, very basics of linguistics work with rising tones and falling tones and cadence and stuff can be tied to communicating emotions rather than concepts. And I think
Well,
possibly,
and they do that too, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken, in Fury Road, because it sounds very deliberate when Furiosa is tugging on the lines to indicate to the fleet they're on the left, they're on the right, but it's driving the scene, and it's something that you might subconsciously catch, or if you're more musically aligned, you'd be like, oh, no, no, I see what you did there, but it's adding to this whole soundtrack and building this badass moment.
That's
Fun
amazing.
stuff.
Thank you. I just want to I'd like to actually swing back to something that did anybody else want to bring anything else from talk about NAMM at all? And we can talk about that brand, but we won't say its name. Did anybody want to bring anything else up there? Yes, Ivan.
There is that brand.
Yeah.
We won't say their name, but I mean, like they brought a lot of stuff this year, and like hopefully they actually get done with some of the, like actually releasing some of it, because like having a Jupiter fake at home would be nice.
A Jupiter fake.
Clone enough.
It's interesting. I heard a guy. I try not to watch YouTube synth videos because I think they're trivial and stupid, and I just want to punch them. It's like, dude, do you ever fucking make music? Except Alex. That's why I love watching Vulture Culture. Is he actually makes music? And if something's crap, Alex is going to say it. But I was watching these people. Firstly, it's really terrible when they're talking about the hate that's in that. For example, what I just demonstrated. But I'm not going to dox someone. And I'll watch those guys if I want to learn about a synth. Of course I do, and I'll take into consideration what they say. They're talking about some of the hate that they've been getting in the synth community, and it's like, what? It's really interesting that the more you go into the politics in different communities, the more you realize that goth industrial's not that bad. Did I just say that? It's interesting that I did see this one guy who was having a freak out that, because of this BX1, the DX1's lost its value, and now the CS80 is going to lose its value. And it's like, I'll absolutely promise you without a shred of reserve that there will not be a BX1 floating around in 50 years' time. I promise. I promise. And I'm not taking anything away from that company as much as I would really love to. I'm not. Like I have a lot of people saying, look, I'm interested in that Lindrum thing because it looks cool and blah, blah, blah. That's whatever, man. Make music. I don't care. Just you make some music with that thing. But I just think don't confuse, like, I hope somebody has some magical connection to this gear, and I hope they make music, and I do hope it lasts them years. I do. But there's something about, I don't expect modern gear to be what vintage gear was. And I had a conversation with somebody once who was talking about how maybe one of the reasons old gear sounds the way it did is that stuff got, the circuit boards were made in acid baths. And the circuit boards are full of inaccuracies, and the lines aren't these exact lines. And is it a possibility that there is some kind of resonant thing being set up within that because they're not traveling through a straight, beautiful line that is causing some inaccuracy, that's causing some sort of something that's resulting in this sound?
is definitely going to do some microelectronic stuff. When I worked at Crane, like if the factory changed the layout of a board, the board would occasionally just stop working because physics and microelectronics were happening. And like those changes would have to be tested before we went out to where it was going. Usually someplace scary.
And it's just really fascinating how when you listen to a modern day synth, it sounds modern, it sounds beautiful, it sounds schmick, it sounds all of this stuff, and that's great. But when somebody says to me, oh, analog sounding, what I think analog sounding is and what the rest of the world seems to say that analog sounding is seems to be very different. That's why I love the Moog 1, because it sounds like it's 1978. And I love these old things, but you don't always want to sound 1978. Sometimes you want to sound 2025. And if I sit like a Rev 2 beside something, sure, granted, Rev 2 was a digitally controlled oscillator, but it did have a slop thing built into it where you could make it more sloppy and the oscillator's more fat. It sounded great, but it still didn't sound like a Prophet 5. I would love to jump on one of the new version 4 Prophet 5s to compare it to, because I own a fucking Rev 3. And I remember it being a very box full of monkeys, or whatever the saying is. It was like, fuck, what's it going to sound like today? And that's the thing about analogs that a lot of people forget, is they sounded like crap. That was the saving thing. And when you put that crap down and compressed it, treated it, added some reverb, it sounded fucking massive, because shit is coming out of that thing that you didn't put in. It's adding all of this stuff to it, the chaos and the crap of it. And that's kind of harkening back to what I was saying about sampling chords where you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. Like, trying to use music, create music that has a large element of it that is out of your control is a very exciting thing. That's what I think. And hey man, support that brand if you want. There's a whole bunch of other brands too that are totally worth being supported. But just create music. That's what I want. I want you to create music. That's what we really fucking need right now. Raziel, what do you think?
One of the interesting effects of watching Vulture Culture do a comparison between an original synth and the VST, he'll do a good back-to-back A/B, so you can actually listen to both in the same 5-second window before your ear becomes reaccustomed and you lose the thread, and you can hear the difference. And I watch the polls that he does, and I listen myself, and I see if it aligns, and you can tell which one's the VST because it sounds better. It just sounds better. It sounds bigger, tighter, punchier. The oscillators are in phase slightly more, and it makes a more direct, punchy impression than the old ones, the originals, are capable of. And, that might not be what you're going for, but if it is, just get the VST and be done with it. It's crazy, though. Like, I don't know if that's a rule, but it's a trend that I was noticing.
Yeah, those poll things are brilliant. And this is the really interesting thing about it, is that you can say the same thing about a modern digital camera versus a fucking camera from the 70s. You can say the same thing about a modern Mustang versus a 1976 fucking Charger, or whatever it is. And for so many reasons, the car now is better. But there's something about the car in the 70s that is just, you can get under the hood and fix it yourself. But that's not the interesting thing about music. I think that is important, is that it's the process and it's the mistakes. And it's why I personally don't like VSTs, is because just the way I operate and I work and the way I'm used to working. And people have said, hey man, why don't you just create more stuff on VSTs? My issue is it's boring. To me, it's very fucking boring. I don't want to be looking at a screen. I don't want to be doing those things, and that's great. And then that's why I don't want to program a DX7. It's boring. But programming a K2000 or something like that, I find really interesting, or an emulator 4 or something, it's really interesting. because there's the whole what happens if I can't do that. Now I have to figure out how I can do what I want to do. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a fascinating thing, Resi.
As much as I love documentation and I love spending time reading the original manufacturer's documentation, if you have to break that out to get much out of the synth, there's a problem. If there's an implementation chart on the screen printed on the surface of the synth, that's not going to be as much fun. If there are connection algorithm block diagrams on the front of the synth that you get to select among, it's kind of not, there's a lot of people that's not going to work with their editing flow. I say this hopefully every week, like one knob per function, man. If that knob always is a filter, I'm going to turn it and I'm going to make sounds.
Yeah.
If you have to read the cheat sheet to see what parameter it's going to turn into when you hit the next button,
Yeah, and that's also really interesting when you then got like when they start mixing them, for example, the Rev 2 or the Moog 1 or the fucking Hydrosynth, where you go, then we're going to add to that this modulation matrix where you start really fucking getting in there. Super fun, super cool.
I think it's okay to have the modulation matrix screen printed on the front of your thing. That's okay. I'll give it a pass for that.
That would be hot. Yeah, so I just think I don't know. See, the other point of the interesting, argument about that company is that they said, well, we're gonna make a DX1 and we're gonna put the filters of a CS80 in there. That's actually very smart. That when you get a whole bunch of synth boffins sitting around a synth going, well, this synth was great, but now with this modern overview, this is how we could make it better. Something like that's great, which I still think the Voyage is one of the greatest fucking synths ever made, because Moog went, and everybody who's ever used a Moog synth, yeah, it's great, but let's add these things to it. That's just my thought. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
This is something I just want to field out there. It doesn't have to be a giant response or whatever, but it's just something to kind of maybe ruminate on. I was thinking about the aspect of like when you get that sound you want, when you're fucking around with, wave shaped synth, yada, yada, yada. Does anybody here like take notes or do like a video journal type deal? Like it doesn't have to be for the world, but I think it's kind of when you have your Eureka Doc Brown moment when you're like, I fucking cracked it. I'm wondering like, if anybody does that, and again, if you don't want to share, it's cool. But I'm just thinking that could be an idea to kind of table to where you go, you know what? When I finally got the fucking sound I wanted out of that, did I document it in some way, shape, or form? So if I want to revisit it later, it's not running around like Dr. Frankenstein being like, what did I patch into it? What lever did I hit? What switch did I pull? It's like, I think it'd be really super encouraging and helpful just to be like, I wrote notes to myself or I did a video journal and I saved it. So that way, if I want to revisit that, and come back to it, I don't have to constantly try to rely on, memory or whatever. I just kind of have a little help me. I got a little cheat sheet,
I don't, but I think it's a great idea. Because, not only is it fun content, but you could also watch it again and you can just basically resynchronize yourself to the excitement you had at that moment. You can remind yourself of, okay, there's something really good here. This is a great idea. I love it. Rezi, what do you think?
You just took the words out of my mouth, man. I don't do it, and I think it's a great idea, and reliving the moment and finding things that you missed along the way, super cool. I don't even tend to really save patches, like... My main synth that has knobs doesn't have a memory anyway right now, so it's not something that I do. But on the VSTs that I mess around with, I lose track of where their memory bank even is. Like, I'll be dicking through the menus and like, I don't know what category that was in. Is it categorized by sound quality or attack speed or something? So getting bogged down in the taxonomy and categorization is what keeps me from doing it. Not that I think it's a bad idea by any stretch, but learning the technique, I think, is also what I'm after. Like, I need to know how I did this and why I did this and what the result was. And it keeps me limited to fewer synths to really learn how to plumb the depths with them. But aside from not adventuring as far, I think it's a healthy way to really get skills. Either, yeah, the alternative being just videotape everything you do as you're messing with it. It's an interesting technique.
Oh, and again,
Awesome.
too, if I were to add some encouragement, like it doesn't have to be super high polished. It doesn't have to be playing into the camera. It could literally just be your tripod pointing down at your rig. And you're like, I'm doing this, I'm switching that, I'm adding in this. It's flipping things, hitting knobs, doing all the things, but it's just that living
Yeah,
journal to
and
yourself.
live stream
being
that
like,
shit
fuck
too.
yeah, if I want to
It's
revisit
good.
this is how. You know.
Brilliant. Thank you. Brett, I saw your hand. What are you thinking?
It, that y'all, Aaron had actually said my thought there, but I guess I can kind of comment to something Raziel said there for a minute. In terms of like saving synth sounds and such like that, or saving patches. On the Kurzweil, that's kind of like one of the things. Like if I don't have a song idea, I'll sit there and I'll just grab a cool sound, something that's out of the preset library, and I'll just try to destroy it. And I save them. I use them. I don't know when I'm going to use it, and I'll say there's pluses and minuses to doing that when it comes to composition. Um, I find a lot of what I do is, which kind of goes in theme with what we've been talking about a little bit. My approach is to take real world sounds and mutilate them to such a point that that they sound like synthesizers. Uh, I love taking the human voice and doing that, especially when it's not supposed to be musical. Like, sorry, maybe a little bit, but anyway, um, yeah. So a lot of those that I'll do, like I remember making an entire synth out of like 3 women who were screaming, and taking those sounds and cutting them up, reversing them, and to where it didn't sound like just someone like reacting like a fright. Instead, it sounded more like it was holding a pitch, and that ended up being one of those ones that I can't save it to the Kurzweil. It didn't happen on the Kurzweil. It happened actually in the DAW, and it was actually a manipulation of 3 different sample sets, and so it's not exactly a patch, but kind of works along the same lines.
I love hearing about your workflow. Rezi, what do you think?
I love hearing about it too. Do you have a system in place for keeping track of patches? Like, is there a category kind of system that you have?
So on the Kurzweil, yeah. So the Kurzweil, of course, it's got the user section. So a lot of times what I'll do there is I'll just tell the DAW, hey, go to the user section, patch and, directly to the patch I made. In that regard, because is it further organized beyond that? No, meaning I'm not looking at a library of these or pianos. And it's because the sounds that I end up saving no longer really fit neatly in categories. I'd have to invent words. And I'm not sure that they would be applicable labels long term.
If I may. Oh, Rezi, I see your hand.
I didn't really have much to add to that other than my mind kind of goes this way only because Ableton started automatically categorizing sounds by function and quality and stuff, using some system of listening to the sound rather than just what synth it's created with for its internal sample collection and synthesizer collection. So it's kind of interesting if that works, like if you need to call up, and I know lots of collections have dark, scary, bright, plucky, You just select one and things that apply to that. Do it. But since this app that I use as my main axe happens to be categorizing them on its own now, it's somewhat interesting.
I sorry, did I hear someone else wanted to jump in there?
I was just going to tell them that one of the approaches I do. So a lot of times I'll sketch on a piano that I never keep, or almost never keep, and it's so that I can get the notes that I want, so that it fits musically, and get all my intonation and everything else. And then I intentionally I move it to something else. It's kind of a 50-50 split between whether or not it goes to just some sort of musical noise patch versus a drum.
Yeah. This is really interesting because it's like how the songs are born. Something I love about the Moog One is every time you sit down, I've said this before, every time you sit at the thing, you're going to write a song. I absolutely fucking guarantee without a question of doubt you are going to create a song. And that's weird because for me, it's become this strange obligation that if I turn that thing on, I have to be in a place where I am ready to receive that song. It's similar to taking mushrooms. Like you're going to receive wisdom, so be prepared to receive wisdom. The fascinating thing about the Moog One is it's set up with 3 synths built into it at once. So, and you can either layer them on top of each other or split the keyboard. I always split the keyboard. So thank you, Adam. So bass down there, chords in the middle, pad sound in the middle, and lead up the top there. And that's the basis of the song. So, and I remember, Brent, how you once said that you will name a song according to the date as opposed to some random name, because that random name keeps changing until you fucking release the thing.
It's not quite the date, but it is close. It's X_000 number.
All right. Which I think is actually really good. And I try and make as many notes as I can on paper before I go to computer, just because for some reason, as soon as it's on computer, it's just done. Like, okay, now for me, it's going into production mode, and I want to spend as much time as I can, me personally, in fucking around on a keyboard. And also there's something magical about scribbling out notes and rewriting them in a scribbly scrawly thing. And also being able to play it, like actually the physicality of playing it. Yes, pen is so much better. Yeah, so it's a fascinating thing of how you build it. And yeah, always just trying to, I don't know, trying to push it and trying to create something different. And yeah, if you were to go on to, Resi, what are you thinking?
I wanted to revise what I said about not saving stuff in light of, Carl, your comment from like an hour ago about synths having a song in them, and also your notes right now on how you transcribe a moment. And that is actually something for me to think about anyway. Like, I will come up with the patch that this synth offers, and it's like a song, and I know that that's the signature sound for that song. And so I just make a new project file based on, like, this is now a demo. So there might be a couple of synths with a couple of patches saved in it. Instead of saving the program preset of that synthesizer VST, just that entire project gets saved with those newly invented and inspirational synths or patches that I designed and created in them. So it's the same as having a lick or a riff or a progression or a vocal idea or a guitar figure. Patches, synths, all go into that same thing. Just save a new song. It's a demo. It's got a title. And the arbitrary one that you can never recall later doesn't say anything about what's in it necessarily. Yeah.
Something I absolutely love doing is when it goes to the Emacs. Sometimes it starts on the Emacs, but I have a thing where the song is starting to take a really rough shape. And that's what I love about the Emacs is that I I will go into the song and I will say, well, it needs this and it needs this. Oh, but here's all this other really cool random shit. And the process of getting a WAV file to the Emacs, because the Emacs is not DOS compatible. It's not MS-DOS. It's this weird Emacs operating system. And you have to go through these translator software and do all this bullshit. Actually doing that part of the song is, for me, where the song starts. It takes shape and then it just goes somewhere. Because as I said before, like when you've got those chords and bits that are doing weird shit in it, you may choose to leave that, you may choose to keep it. But it's a really fun thing, because it's when this other language, mindset, culture of sound, it's like alien compared to it, like a synthesizer, like an analog synth. When you're using a sampler like this, it's a completely different species. The way they mingle is absolutely lovely. Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, something I'd like to kick in that I think kind of like rides in tandem with what we're talking about. It's like talking about sound discovery and, God forbid, play and actually like have fun with the things, all of the things. But I was also thinking about, if you get to a point where you're musically blocked, you have a production block, whatever, it might be time to revisit not the song as an entirety, not the entire song, but trying to distill it down to what's one of the main driving feelings of the song, like what is a theme within the song. So, and that can encourage you to kind of flip new switches in your brain to say, what's the essence that I'm driving at? In other words, if you think about it like cinematically, what is the sound of the chase, the heist, the plan, the exploration, the discovery, the on and on and on and on? That could be that thing that just kind of helps you change tracks if your brain is railing against you, or you can't figure shit out, or you're just like kind of losing the joy, and what you're trying to navigate through a song whenever you kind of get hemmed up. Like I said, I would definitely encourage, like, rediscover thematically what it is and what you're driving at. And that might work in tandem with the new sounds that you're messing with. And you go, oh, yeah, that's it. That's what's going to bridge this to that. That's what's going to start putting this song together, to where you could, have more fun with it, for sure.
Yeah, like it's 5 a.m., it's 3 a.m., you're separated from your crew, it's raining and you're out of ammo. Something like that. And the robots are coming, but they can't smell you, and because it's cold, which means you're cold, they can't see you. Shit like that makes it really fun. That might not end up being in the song or having anything to do with the song, but yeah, like you say, that concept of shaping, 3 a.m. when it's raining and you're out of ammo and the robots are tracking you down does suck. Thank you, Jen. But it's a fantastic image.
Yeah, they started doing stuff like that more and more, to where, like, it's like you play games and stuff and they start rolling it in with a music cue. It's not a pulse pounding, rah, the whole game isn't that. It's, oh, fuck. Like Carl said, something's coming. It starts to fade in. It starts to ramp up. And that as that music gets exponentially more chaotic, that some shit's coming. It's literally cueing that enemy horde that's coming. Or if you hear a fanfare, it might be like, oh, fuck, we're saved. Reinforcements on the way.
And this is something else really interesting about using a sampler I was thinking about, was how if it's an old sampler and you can't time compress it, so in order for you to make that thing get in pitch, get in time, the pitch is going to be out. And the pitch is going to be randomly out. Like, it's going to be semitone, quarter tone out. And that was something that was happening like in a lot of the gangster rap and stuff in the early 90s, late 80s, where samples were just being thrown in there and they didn't make musical sense, but they added emotional sting. And what I was saying before on the whole Tristan chords thing, there's a real opportunity there for, if you've got a pad sound, why not pitch it so it's quarter of a tone out? So it's actually competing with something, or it's got a really slow LFO that's dropping it up and down. Like playing a note that falls up and down by this tiny amount, that's creepy. But when you start playing an entire like orchestra, it becomes hellishly unsettling. These things are fun. These things create really, really wonderful things. Aaron.
To that end, I mean, there's a point in the new Blade Runner movie. Well, I say new, but newer, to where they had intermittent music kind of like washing in and throwing out. And it was this ballroom of like holographic projections, but it was haunting, but it was also so fucking cool at the same time because there's holographic projections of all this nostalgic music, but it like Carl said, it's discordant. It's it's a step down, or it's intermittent. It's missing pieces, but it's still tracking forward. It's not just stutter stopping and looping on one point. It's a progression of a song, but you're getting chopped signal, like you're getting interference, you're getting distortion, and it just creates like a badass moment. In a great movie that's driven by synths, they've also found a way to play with sound to where it'll pique your interest. It'll raise your eyebrows a little bit,
Yeah. I'm just also reading some of the comments that are going on about lyrics and stuff. I got paper, like a roll of paper fucking years ago, and it's maybe 12 inches across and 10, 15 feet long, and it's a roll. And the objective was just to sit down and to write on this thing. Of course, that never happened. It takes a lot of fucking words to fill up a chunk of that. But the objective was to start building word salads. The objective was to begin like vomiting out ideas, doodles, anything. Because, I read where Brett, you said your writing's atrocious, so is mine. But sometimes, I don't know, with a nice fine tip felt pen in a cafe and just go. It's a nice thing. I've always wanted to do, like, I remember seeing like notes of Jarre, Jean-Michel Jarre and stuff where he would write notes about, because, there's no preset, like, on some of your gear, Rezi, you can't store presets, so you have to write them down. This is what the attack decay sustain, yeah, you take a photo. But it's, it's, man, it's really interesting. I think for a while, my lyrics, I think they dipped a little bit when I went from pen and paper to iPad, because it became too simple. And then, in the last few albums, they've got back to where they are and better, because I think it took a while for me to get into the hang of writing lyrics on a digital device. Because for me, and I stress, for me, it's too easy. That's the thing. That's why I like old gear. It's why I like this shit. It's why I like music being hard. Is that if you're going to dedicate to it, you've got to make sure the idea is good as opposed to just throwing it down. But I stress, that's just me. Aaron, what do you think?
I like the paper roll idea for sure. It's kith and kin to drawing stuff out of the fishbowl. You can set up your own crime conspiracy lab, where you're pinning them to a board, and you could have 18 different things that previously were not in a sequence. It wasn't a full sentence. That's how I write quite a lot of my stuff. It doesn't matter if it's a comedy bit or horror. There's this unique through line to where everything is just fractured. And I could say, you know what? That's the thing. That's the idea. It's not fully fleshed out, but, no biggie. You know what I mean? I would save all these fragments to where I'm not Billy Crystal and Throw Mama from the Train, where he's got writer's block, and he literally can't get the first sentence to set off an entire novel. And he's torturing himself, and he's screaming, and he's losing his shit. But I found it incredibly helpful to where, I get what you mean. There is a detachment with some of the digital stuff, but some of the small bits of rewarding for the digital aspect for me at least was just I could save little fragments of stuff and then I could add in tandem. But yeah, again, you could also do that with a notepad, scraps of paper, throw them on the floor, put them on the board, Frankenstein that shit. But and you could, it's really freeing. It's cool to have like a tactile side of writing it and being able to structure it. And literally, it could be complete chaos. I mean, you could literally just throw them out on a table and see where they end up. So.
Thank you. Yes. Brett, what do you think?
So, once upon a time, I actually used to, this is a band I ran out of high school. So it's been a minute. But once upon a time, I used to write lyrics on paper, and I liked it. It was fun. I had a fountain pen that I made. So I had the tip, and then I got some Dragon's Blood ink from it was actually from a pagan supply store, and filled the little reservoir up, and then actually solidified the pen by using gauze. So the pen was about yay long, and it looked like it was already wounded. And as it leaked, it started bleeding and other cool things, And I still like going back to that on occasion, but now typically when I go back to it, I typically want to do it for the wall. It's a piece of art at that point. It's like, okay, I've gotten everything I want to say. There's no more scratching and through lines and insert this word here. And now it's a document that you can actually use when you want to do recording and such. And that's kind of part of what shaped my tendencies to move to more digitally. One of the objectives that I'm after is, I'm writing lyrics to perform them, at least in a sense of recording them. Now, well, if my handwriting is going to be my obstacle, then I'm going to use type. So it gives me, I take advantage of the editing ability and such, and I get my scratching it off and all that stuff, and I work it out roughly in that format. And then when it comes to the artistic format, in which, now I want the pages to bleed, that becomes a more personal matter.
Thank you. Raziel, I see your hand just really quickly. Because I'm reading, thank you for these comments, like Alistair's talking about the 8x11 spiral bound notebooks. Yes. The thing that gets me about doing it like this is storing them together cohesively. And where it's digital, it's natural. But when it's paper, I have a book, like a book with sleeves in it, but it's, yeah, that's the trick. Because like, it's not just that, it's also, if I have a console strip from the mixing desk, I have to keep that in there. I don't know why I could throw that out, but I have to keep it. As mentioned, I've got these printouts that I use to tell me what each Emacs is doing. I don't have to have them, but I just keep them. So keeping all that stuff together, I should give that shit away when I do a Patreon or something. I don't know. I always think someone somewhere is going to find this shit interesting, but then I think, who wants my crap? Thank you. Rezi, what are you thinking?
Man, saving the scribble strip tape from the console after a session, like that's a ceremonial thing. If you can have them on the wall or something until the album's done or whatever your ritual is, that's good shit. And I was thinking, Brett, you're echoing a lot of my sentiments about the medium, the media. And then I was thinking it's only pretentious if you talk about it. If you just do it, like you're doing your thing. But also, like, it does matter. I was looking at like some Emily Dickinson scrawl one time, and I was like, that enhances the character of the work. Like, just knowing that that's how she wrote it and that strange tiny writing. And so to the extent that the tools matter to you and they influence what you're doing, if you need to set up your rituals and you need to set up your shrine and stuff, if you're fountain pen and your size of your notebooks and your hand-bound stuff matter, and you can touch them and they make a difference to you, and you fill them with the words, maybe it's okay to mention it once or twice. I still feel a little funny talking about it, but you know, it's beautiful. It's still beautiful. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick example. I had a track called Crown of Shards, and when I got done writing it and whatnot, it was actually my mom who wanted a copy of the lyrics. So I sat there and I took the time to actually, you know, do the kind of pseudo calligraphy, whatever, for all the lines, and then I took guitar strings from that I just had, you know, that were actually old and broken and whatnot, and I actually made a sort of crown that flowed through the paper. That's what I kind of like doing now.
Yeah, man. I think I'm trying to come up with something pithy that distills all this stuff, but like making your obstacles and habits and rituals, and if it puts you in the right mind space, and I think Adam mentioned whatever gets you into the flow state of really being able to just come up with stream of consciousness stuff. For me, whatever reason, pen and paper and a scratchy, like rough, thick paper and a fountain pen really trigger something. I don't know if it's necessary, but it does a thing. Carl, I see you're back, but Aaron wanted to jump in, has his hand up, so I want to go to him first. Talk to me.
I was about to say, yeah, I'll keep it brief. I think yeah, a lot of the notepads that I have, I might find myself being like, you know what, I used like 10 pages and I never fully filled it out. But my process started getting to a point where I was just like, you know what? It became helpful in that eventually I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a binder. This binder is going to be all things Grimm. I'm literally going to rip the pages out of aforementioned notebooks and I'll donate them or whatever else. But I still have the pages because you could throw them in a document sleeve or staple. I literally, some of them just stapled them together, all these little bits and bobs, put them in a sleeve, put them in a binder. Fuck yeah, keep going. You know, and I like to have a little bit of redundancy in that. I might have it physically written as well as digitally done. But then to everybody's point, you could look back and just be like, yeah, this was actually really fucking cool when I wrote it, you know, and I can appreciate it, or maybe somebody else will. And it's hand etched in different ink. And there's, you know, photos of the process or just the actual, you know, a hardbound process that's consolidated to a binder.
Thank you. I have Frank. Frank says hi. Yeah, it's really interesting how, oh, look, there it is. Thank you, Rezi. It's really interesting how, I don't know, man. I always saw the, you know, Seven, the John Doe's notepads from Seven, how they were like these psychotic things. I found them to be the most inspiring things. That it was also the images and everything else that went along with it. That's right, Frank. That's right. I'm just giving him love, and he doesn't want it. He's a big guy, and he does push his weight around. That's it. Go get him. Now we're going to hear Frank protest. Here it goes. He's got his I got him one of those automatic feeders. I'll get back to writing in a minute. I got him one of those automatic feeders thinking it'll stop him from waking me at 3 a.m., which it kind of does. But he's figured out that, you know how cats, when they're pissed off about something, they bury their food? Well, not only does he take all the food and throw it all over the floor, and I've stopped picking it up now. I just, you know, sweep it in. Like, I bought him a fucking little sweepy thing to put it in the one place. Now he actually knocks the entire, this thing's a tower this big, and he just knocks it over. Because he's a bastard. I love my bastard. But yeah, that whole thing about, you know, the opening sequence to Seven, where you're flipping through the books and it's showing the creation of it, and you just go, man, I really want to get me a typewriter, and I really want to stitch things together, and I want to make a zine. it really stems back to that really wonderful connectivity. And it's my difficulty of it is I never know how it's received. I never know if people like lovingly, go through it. Because I sent a zine to someone today. And I was thinking, oh, I wonder if they're going to like, receive this with the love that I put into the creation of this. But increasingly, I guess it doesn't matter. I need to think about my joy in doing it. I'm doing another Ice Planet 9000 Kickstarter. I'm shooting the video today, and I'm doing the last time I destroyed the lids. I don't know if you got one, but people said, "Can we get some more lids?" So it's like, okay, I'll do that again. So you destroy the lid of the tin box that your stuff comes in to make it look like a spaceship or a piece of space debris, and it became a really fun thing. And I've got to remind myself that the currency of this must be fun and it must be cool. The currency is cool. The currency is fun. We are judging it on that, not on money, not on how it will be received, but how much fun and how much cool you get out of it, you, the artist. And it's quintessential. Aaron.
I agree 1000%. It's one thing to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this with a level of polish, right? It's going to be cool. It's going to be fun. But at the end of the day, depending on how you might go, it might be, you know what? The default might be, I got to farm this out to a t-shirt company. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. That's all the manufactured shit. But at that point, it just feels like it's more like tedious, right? Or it becomes a little bit lame. It becomes a little increasingly lamer as you go because you go, I just want to make sure that production is up to specifications. But if you have fun with it, like you said, you could randomize the damage on the box. You could add things. You could, you could do things that are thematic. And, I had fun with the Wicked Stories rollout. And there's little details to where, the same ink tone that I used in an ink pen to sign off a Bet Noir print is the same color wax that was in a sealing wax coin, and the sealing wax coin was to mimic an obol for the ferryman. So that brought joy to me. That brought value to me, and being like, oh, fuck yeah, I made a design for Charon. I did all the things. It's a tactile thing. I'm actually working with wax, and I'm doing all of the things. And then also the print was not a digitally altered thing. I had fun with that process because I made a candle altar. I made every single fucking candle on that thing, lit all the candles, dressed up as Bet Noir, sprayed the effects spray in the air to catch the light rays and screen it. And there is not a single fucking digital aspect that was doctored, altered, Photoshop, some kind of glam plug-in, none of that fuckery, only practical fuckery. And that's what made it really fun and really awesome and rewarding, even down to the t-shirts and stuff that we pressed, and if people find, like Carl said, people find joy in that, or they might pour over it, in the details, cool. And if they don't, then, that's cool too, because again, you knew how you felt when you were doing it. Because you put on music and you're fucking jamming and you're doing all of the things that make those work, and that are like rewarding to you, so you'll feel that accomplishment later rather than the bitterness of being like, fuck, I should have done X, Y, or Z. I should have just tried a little bit harder, or, you're always going to have the gotcha moments later of all the shit that you could have, would have, should have done. But arriving at the point, if you were doing something that's actually rewarding and feels good while you're doing it, then fuck yeah, that's even better. It's something to strive for.
And that's another nice thing about when you start using like analog mechanical pen paper stuff, is that you are throwing yourself outside of the process that you normally do, and you are throwing yourself at the mercy of ink, of smudgings, and all of this other random stuff. That it's these materials, these mediums have something to say too. And if you give the synthesizer has something to say, it has something to contribute. And if you allow it the time and the space, it can, and if you listen, you can let it contribute. And I think that that is something to me that is really important, that I need to expand my mind of what is contributing to the art and everything else. Blah. Does anybody else want to jump in or talk about something different or talk about synthesizers or something fun? Can we have something fun? Please? Aaron.
I mean, the fun aspect for sure. More and more, I'm always prop hunting. I'm always prop seeking. Those are things that I can bring in, to Grim. I can bring in the photo shoots. I would definitely encourage, you could do so much shit with so little, and, inspiration's fickle, but more and more, I've just been seeing people when they're doing photo shoots, a lot of people start revealing their process more and more. And that to me is really fucking cool, because you can get a mirror from the thrift store or pull it off your wall, bring it out in a field, put it on the ground, pour water on top of it, and catch refractions and shadows and images and whatever else. And then bang, that's your fucking album art, or that's your single artwork, or that's your page 3 of your, your album book, if you're putting an album out on the jewel case and all that jazz. But all that being said, some of these things are incredibly low tech. It's just fucking around with cellophane and aluminum foil and seeing how the light reflects off of shit, and just, again, having fun. There is a park and a place that I frequent that's a frisbee golf park. So it's got a fuckload of rolling landscape. But in the back of said park, there is a tree that looks like a portal to another dimension. I shit you not. It's got this giant ripped, like triangular shape and this hollow base, and I've done a little bit of stuff there. Wasn't entirely happy how it turned out, but I digress from the point. I'm going to revisit that place with a fog machine, with a smoke machine, with lights, with Grim characters, and do something out in the wilds because the shit's fun, And, there's also the joy of being like, I got to get the fuck out of this park before they close the gate on me, but trying to find that happy timing of when is sunset, when is it dark, when is prime time. In cinema, they call it like the golden hour, when you can get that golden glow, that badass look to the scene. And a lot of times an entire day of filming is anchored just on that one thing. But if I were to circle back to joy, there is a joy in that film production crew of just being like, man, all the things that I'm doing right now are, they're fun and there's excitement, there's energy behind it. And then it's going to be rewarding and fucking amazing once we get this shot during golden hour or during this peak time, and you've brought all the tools, you've brought everything that you're supposed to in spades. And then you're just going to have fun, and you may get some really badass imagery out of it. But then you also got stories to tell, just being like, yeah, I had a blast going to XYZ location and doing all of these things in pursuit of art. So.
Try that again. Hi, lovely. Yes. Yeah, great. I'm sort of also looking at a new Angelspit cover art, and I have no idea. No idea. I want to do something different. And I just, I'm thinking I want to do a photographer again, and then that ends up in this horror land.
Hey, have you heard of this new thing? They're letting computers design album covers and everybody loves it.
I don't know if you're joking or not.
Totally joking.
Okay.
All I'm seeing is backlash about goth bands who used generative art.
And everyone's doing it.
I know. Cleopatra.
Yeah, I want to do something that's real, and I want to do something that's I don't know. But it's really weird. I'm in a very strange place right now. Maybe people can relate. That my mind's so overloaded with stuff and ideas and stuff and panic and everything else that actual artistic creativity, the ability to combobulate noise and chaos into art, because I think that's what I do, I'm not sure, is becoming very difficult. And this isn't a recent thing. This for me has been building up for years now. And yeah, I'm finding it all very overwhelming. And like I've got a I don't know what to do, and I feel that every time I find it extremely difficult pulling other people in, because other people are also in this place of incapable of making art anymore. Musically, ideas, it's harder to form ideas. And it's harder to form ideas that we can do to create, because everybody instantly goes, oh, that's going to cost a lot of money. Oh, that's going to it's going to do this. Oh, it's over. Once again, the currency of cool and fun has been removed, and trying to find that is something that I am pushing towards actively. I went on another big fast this week. Maybe fasting works for you. Some people it doesn't work for, but it really works for me. It clears out so much baggage in my mind. It was a 72-hour fast, maybe 68 hours. It's fucking great. And it feels like each time I do it, I edge towards something wonderful. And I'm watching David Lynch, and I'm just trying to, really find that thing. And to find that thing, it's hard. It's a hard journey to get that good idea. It's a fucking hard journey. Yeah. That's all I got. Does anybody else want to jump in with anything? Or do we want to stream on over to MTV TV? Okay. We might raid. I would like to very deeply and graciously thank everyone for joining us. And a reminder, we're here every Saturday. We will be here again next Saturday. Join us here at Art of Rock. Please follow Angelspit's Twitch. That's where a whole bunch of stuff is going on. Also follow Angelspit's Patreon. It's A-OK and ready to, most of it's free. If you want to throw me $3 a month, I would be really grateful. If you're in LA, February 19, we're doing a gig and I'm very excited about it. I'm ready. 3 tracks are ready. They're rehearsed. They're mixed. I am ready to do this. I'm doing something quite different and I'm very excited about it. Something that can't be recorded. And it's Black Lodge theme. So get Twin Peaks on me, baby. Industrial Incisions playlist. Go and find some new bands that you like. And if you're on that, please pimp it. Wednesday night, Vulture Culture talks about synthesizers, and it's very inspiring. You should so jump on that as well. MTV TV is where we're about to go to very shortly. If you've got something, send it to them. Take a camera, go out, have some damn fun. And Rezi, thank you as always. Rezi's got a whole bunch of fantastic stuff. Hold on, let me do that again because there's no plus at the end of your destinations. Rezi's YouTube, the Patreon, and the Bandcamp, fucking brilliant music. And thank you again, Rezi.
You're welcome, and thank you so much.
If you're watching on anything else right now, we are going to raid to MTV TV. That's where we're going. So Diana, if you could set that right off, it would be booyah. We're going to hang back here and have a chatsky watsky. I've done something very strange here. Oh, I want to start thinking about maybe doing a second one of these things, whether it be on Discord or something. I don't know. Thanks, Diana. Like where we just meet up, talk about shit, maybe watch a movie or something. I don't know. Got to look into that. I think we're raiding. Yay for raid! I'm gonna join that raid. So I just need to find a time to do it, because time is so random. But we could I know Atom Bomb does stuff. Double feature on his channel, 1 p.m. Thank you, Adam. We should watch that. Maybe we'll just do that.
It never seems
Anyway.
to fail. Conversations we have here end up coming up during the week and everything else. So yeah, that could be a good idea.
I'm gonna kill this stream.